He exists in a stratosphere entirely his own, a global icon and a brand with the highest profile in the history of the sport, commanding the world's attention every time he steps onto a pitch. But the player with the most significant reach in modern football began his life with absolutely no systemic advantages. To understand the athlete, we have to look at the exact opposite end of the spectrum. In the 1980s, on the island of Madeira, his family lived in a small tin-roofed home. His mother was a cook, and his father a municipal gardener, struggling to provide for a family in a neighborhood defined by working-class poverty. He spent his childhood kicking a ball around these narrow, rocky streets. He had a level of raw talent that was obvious to everyone, but being born on an isolated island meant the statistical probability of him ever reaching a professional league was nearly zero. Talent is common, but a high-stakes exit strategy is rare. For him, the environment wasn't just a background. It was the first opponent he had to intentionally outwork. At age 12, he made a decision that many adults would find agonizing. He packed his few belongings and left his family and his island behind, flying hundreds of miles away to join the Sporting CP Academy in Lisbon. The transition was brutal. He was a skinny kid with a thick island accent that made him a target for mockery. He spent his first months at the academy in a state of constant homesickness, often in tears as he tried to adjust to the isolation of life in a major city. He responded to that loneliness by working while the other boys slept. He would sneak into the gym at night to lift weights and stay late on the training pitch to refine his touch, replacing the comfort of home with a relentless, obsessive schedule. The isolation became the price he paid for the physical edge he was building. By the time he was a teenager, he had accepted that he would have to endure significant discomfort to secure his future. The payoff arrived in 2003, during a preseason friendly. Sporting played Manchester United, and the unknown teenager played with such speed and confidence that he dismantled the English champions' defense single-handedly. The United players were so impressed that they allegedly told their manager, Sir Alex Ferguson, they couldn't leave the country without signing him. Ferguson agreed, bringing the teenager to England immediately. Old Trafford represented a massive increase in scale and expectation. In Portugal, he relied on flashy dribbling and individual tricks, but the Premier League demanded a level of physical power and tactical efficiency he hadn't yet developed. The veteran players at United subjected him to a harsh apprenticeship. They kicked him in training and mocked his theatrical falls, forcing him to strip away the useless flair and transform himself into a direct, lethal attacker. 5 years later, in the pouring rain in Moscow, that transformation was complete. He scored a towering header to help United win the Champions League and secured his first Ballon d'Or as the world's best player. Manchester proved that high-level discipline could turn raw potential into the world's most valuable asset. But staying at the top would require him to embrace a new kind of competition. In 2009, he moved to Real Madrid for a world record feat. He arrived at the Bernabeu with the eyes of 80,000 fans on him, each expecting a performance that justified the unprecedented price tag. In Spain, his game changed again. He stopped being a winger who tried to beat defenders with skill and became a striker who prioritized one-touch finishes. He was refining himself into a tool built for a single purpose: scoring goals. This chart shows the goal-scoring output of Ronaldo and Lionel Messi over 5 years. This constant back-and-forth rivalry meant that a standard record-breaking season was no longer enough to stay ahead. When one scored a hat-trick on a Tuesday, the other often matched it on a Wednesday. This external pressure forced him to break his own physical limits repeatedly just to maintain his standing in the public eye. Having a rival at the same level prevented him from ever becoming complacent. He stayed at his peak because the alternative was falling into second place. His influence eventually moved beyond what he could do with the ball. During the 2016 Euro final, the hopes of the entire Portuguese nation rested on him to deliver their first major trophy. But early in the match, a severe knee injury forced him to the ground. He tried to stay on the pitch, but eventually he had to be carried off in tears, his contribution seemingly over. Instead of retreating to the locker room, he returned to the touchline with a heavily bandaged leg. He spent the rest of the match shouting instructions and directing his teammates, acting as a second manager from the sidelines. Portugal won the match in extra time. Lifting that trophy showed that his will to win had become something his teammates could rely on, even when he wasn't physically playing. That night proved he had become more than a star player. He was a leader whose presence alone could change the outcome of a match. In his mid-30s, an age when most forwards are considering retirement, he moved to Juventus in Italy. He continued to lead the league in scoring, proving that his physical decline was happening much slower than his peers. He continued to produce moments of elite athleticism, like leaping over 2 meters in the air for a bicycle kick. These weren't lucky breaks, but the result of a body that was being maintained with professional precision. He eventually took his career to a new continent, continuing to demand total effort from himself in his late 30s. His pace has slowed, but his output remains high regardless of the league. This longevity is the result of extreme daily maintenance. By treating his body like a piece of high-end equipment, he has successfully pushed his retirement further back than almost any other player in history. Recently, he reached his 900th career goal for club and country. It's a number that is difficult to comprehend, serving as the final piece of evidence for his consistency over 2 decades. The path from a child in a tin-roofed house to the 900th goal in a global stadium shows that focused, daily work eventually outlasts any natural gift. His life shows that a lack of resources at the beginning of a story does not have to dictate the end, provided it is met with a total refusal to accept failure. He turned himself into a weapon against his own circumstances, using football to outrun the poverty he was born into. He didn't just play the game, he mastered the discipline required to dominate it.